Section 5 of RA 11201 or the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development Act provides as follows. The department shall exercise the following powers and functions. I. Policy development, coordination, monitoring, and evaluation. Subparagraph C. Formulate housing policies and programs such as public housing in coordination with the attached agencies for the homeless and underprivileged families. So, aware tayo sa mandatong ito. Kaya nga, so si homeless, pinatalon kaagad natin sa very complicated, sophisticated home ownership system, Mr. President. So,
culture shock yun.
so I mean, that's just a realization namin dito while we were talking about it. Kung totoong inisip natin yung homeless, baka hindi sila yung naisip dito sa 4PH program. So, from the very start, let me apologize with my questions because I really find this cluster difficult to understand, Mr. President, what their plans are as well as how we will be funding their plans, Mr. President. So, our sponsor has stated that this sector led by the DHSUD has revised targets. Ang original ata 6 million ata.
Yes, Mr. President.
At the start of the President Marcos's term. Now it will be now down to 3.2 million housing units to be constructed ba yun over the 6-year term of Bongbong Marcos.
Yes, Mr. President.
Okay. Malaki pa yun, ano? Kasi almost half na yun. So, there is no promise na yung 2.8 ba yung balanse yung tinanggal natin sa to be constructed? Are we still promising something about the 2.8 million? O wala na? Para klaro, para I know what to focus on, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President, good minority leader. Actually, the reduction in the housing target from 6 to 3.2 million is based on the upcoming housing needs study that DHSUD is validating with the NEDA. And I wish to confirm for the record, Mr. President, that the target reduction from 6 to 3.2 million units nga po is aligned at least with the preliminary findings of the study, which indicate an accumulated housing need of 2.2 million units as of December 2022, though projected to reach 6.9 million by 2028, Mr. President.
Ano po yun? 2.2 to 6.9 million units parang shortfall as to, ano yun, those who will need housing units minus available housing units, then yun po yun. From 2.2 million to 6.9 million ang cannot possibly be satisfied. Yun po ba yan?
Ang na-revise lamang po, Mr. President, good minority leader, is the time horizon. Kasi DHSUD is still projecting forward na kahit yung projection of 6.9 million by 2028 ay masasagot din, matutugunan din beyond the time of this administration. So they are still projecting targets year on year to deliver housing units until 2032 to reach at least a total of 6.5 million housing units, Mr. President. So yung mga kasalukuyang under construction ay sigurado na pong makokompleto, and then DHSUD is also projecting forward until nga po 2032 to reach that projected need of about 6 million, Mr. President.
So, the department is planning to continue with that kind of mindset as well as planning, that they're planning beyond the term of President Marcos?
Of course, Mr. President, they can only rightfully exercise that mandate hanggang pong 2028. Pero siguro po, iiwan po nila yung kanilang track record, their accomplishments by year 2028, lessons learned for the consideration of the next administration at yung susunod pong department. Pero at least po, meron po silang maibibili na mga indicators na based on what they intend will be a successful accomplishment of their targets until 2028 na posibleng mode of meeting the housing needs even for the next administration. Of course, leading the final decision and actual maintenance or revision of the strategy to that next administration, Mr. President.
So let's imagine na 2028 na June 2028. So ang plano ba ng DHSUD and the housing sector is that may mga unfinished projects, ongoing but unfinished projects pa by end of the term of President Marcos. So that theoretically, pag ma-finish yung mga yon, 6 million units ang madi-deliver nila all in all.
The 6 million, Mr. President, good minority leader, most probably hindi talaga madedeliver by 2028. Pero
Yes, yes.
projected,
Oh.
given
Klaro
Yes,
guys.
Mr.
So,
President.
ang madi-deliver, 3.2. Yan ang klaro. Pero meron bang, sa planning ba ng DHSUD, sa mind ba nila, June 2028, may nasa start na ng mga proyekto magiging half-finished or semi-finished or unfinished but ongoing or started. And if theoretically they are all finished, they will amount to 6 million.
By June 2028, Mr. President, meron na pong housing units construction started at the magnitude of a total of 907,000. And yung maa-address by actual construction completed or started by 2028 ay yung pong 3.2 million. Yun po yung target tugunan ng 4PH program in the total housing gap of 6.9 million. Yung hindi po matutugunan by 2028 ng 4PH, tinatansya po ng DHSUD, pwede pa rin ma-finance by other existing programs, though not by 4PH. Also, Mr. President, for the record, by 2028, bukod sa 907,000 housing units na construction started, by that same year, 2028, meron na pong housing units delivered to the number of 1,108,924. At meron din pong, yun na nga po, Mr. President, meron din pong schedule of delivery until 2023 na nandito po sa table from which I'm quoting at pwede ko rin pong bigyan ng kopya ang good minority leader, Mr. President.
Sige po, ang dami kasing figures na po, nalito rin ako actually, Mr. Secretary, in all honesty. I am a mathematician pero sa dami po nung 3.2 million, 6.9 million, 907,000, iba-iba pa. So
I apologize, Mr. President.
if in writing na lang po
Yes.
sana kung ano yung mga
Apo,
targets.
I will do that po, submit in writing to the good minority leader, Mr. President. Ito pong mga datos from year 2024 till 2032 na housing units delivered at saka housing units construction started para papunta dapat dun sa target dapat na mga 6.5 million units by year 2032 as a projection.
Teka, Mr. President, Madam Chairwoman, bakit ba natin kailangan banggitin pa yung 6.5 na 2032? Alisin na lang natin siguro. Let's just, what is the plan talaga of the, okay, what's the plan of the DHSUD? 3.2 million housing units finished and started. Tama, ganun. Finished and started construction. Yun yata, para klaro eh. And then the entire cost, syempre, when you plan, may costing you 3 trillion. Did I get that correctly? 3 trillion pesos? Kasi kailangan ko ng time basahin ito.
Option to appeal to your version. Ito yung exact. Opo, ito na sir yung question na galing sa kanila. Kaya tagaling sa ilang gusto lang nilang kapasa sa court na yung plan.
Mr. President, good minority leader, the cost of the 3.2 million housing units would come to 4 trillion pesos, Mr. President. And the advice of the good minority leader, Mr. President, is well taken. Siguro hatiin na lang namin itong mahaba-habang table at least to end by 2028 and then pwedeng separate table yung na-foresee ng DHSUD na pwedeng ma-achieve by 2032 if the similar strategy will be pursued by the next administration, Mr. President.
Kasi pwede kasing pang-impress yun eh. Pero alam mo na, yung katotohanan na, kaya yung umpisa natin 6 million, impress eh. Pero adjust ka agad yan. Siguro nag-adjust ka agad yata. One year, one and a half years into the administration, 3.2 na lang, in-adjust ka agad eh. Mr. President, so...
Although I thought, Mr.
So-
President, that the good minority leader also welcomed that adjustment as a sign na
Okay.
mas nagiging realistic yung
Is
DSUD.
that the final adjustment from the sector? Talagang na-compute nyo na po yan na may computer simulation pa, may at the cost of 4 trillion. So dito na pumasok yung financing, how to finance it. Hindi to entero gobyerno ang naisip natin, di ba? That's why narinig ko yung we need a government guarantee.
Yes, Mr. President.
Do we already have that government guarantee?
Mr. President, good minority leader, sa ngayon po, pinoproseso na ng DSUD sa gobyerno, particularly sa Department of Finance, yung mga detalye at go signal para dito sa government guarantee. And yes, Mr. President, dun sa tanong ni minority leader kanina, pinlano na po talaga year on year hanggang 2028 yung housing units delivered, yung interest subsidy requirement, at pati po yung guarantee requirement year on year hanggang 2028. So, firm plans po ito, hindi po ito isang pangarap lamang, Mr. President.
Without government guarantee, hindi siya ma-achieve.
Yung guarantee, government guarantee po, Mr. President, ay mas may empower lahat ng stakeholders i-reach yung targets na kakailanganin. Without the government guarantee pa lamang, makakaproduce na po ang DSUD at key shelter agencies ng 162,000 per year. Pero maa-unlock po ng government guarantee yung higit na capacities ng mga stakeholders na to. At potentially, masasagot yung ilang mga challenges dun sa private sector reliances. Nabanggit ko po kanina, Mr. President, yung ilang mga challenges tulad ng lengthy loan approval processes, yung risk aversion mula sa lenders, at saka yung high interest rates. So, nakikita po ng department na with the government guarantee, matutugunan yung mga hamon na ito at aayos din po, masusolusyonan yung mga problema, Mr. President.
There are currently under construction 162,000 units. Well, tama yun. Walang government guarantee na gawa ninyo.
Yes, Mr. President.
Binibilang ko yung passage of time. 2.5 years po yung nakalipas. It's not 162,000 per year actually. So, tama po. Kasi kung 162,000 currently under construction and you have already been in place for 2.5 years. So, yun. So, it took you 2.5 years to have 162,000 units under construction.
That is
Tama yun,
correct.
without government guarantee. Tama yun.
Exactly,
So,
Mr. President.
I don't think it's per year, Mr. President.
Yes. The good minority leader is correct, Mr. President. In 2.5 years, 162,000 total ang housing units so far under the original 4PH program as conceived. Kaya po nakita po ng department na kakailanganin nila ng isang shift to address those challenges sa private sector reliance. At ito nga po yung what they hope will be a game changer, yung government guarantee system.
That's why they need that. They need that.
Yes, Mr. President.
Kasi yun na yun, ang assumption yata yun, when you have that, then you can access capital, the participants in the program can access capital or will release capital kasi may andyan sa likod si gobyerno.
Yes,
Then
Mr.
you'll be
President.
able to probably access that 4 trillion pesos that you need to build 3.2 million units.
Yes, Mr.
Magkano
President.
lumalabas yun, Ma'am Secretary, per unit?
On the average, Mr. President, aabot ng 1.5 million pesos per unit.
And itong planong ito, 3.2 million units, high-rise lahat ito, condominium type. Yes, pag sinabing vertical, building.
Vertical
Ano bang concept?
development, Mr.
Pagka residential yung building, di ba condominium ang concept doon? Condominium ang concept, di ba? Condominium is a concept.
Medium and high rise, Mr. President, so almost condominium.
Concept na may sarili kang unit, may common areas, etc.
Ganon po, Mr. President.
Meron kayong sharing of expenses sa common areas.
Yes, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Sino po man target natin? May mga trabaho na, di ba?
Yes, Mr. President.
Pati yung rule sa'yo, Loni na.
Pati po, simula po sa minimum wage earners, Mr. President, ang target nitong 4PH with government guarantee moving forward from next year and beyond.
Section 5 of RA 11201 or the Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development Act provides as follows. The department shall exercise the following powers and functions. I. Policy development, coordination, monitoring, and evaluation. Subparagraph C. Formulate housing policies and programs such as public housing in coordination with the attached agencies for the homeless and underprivileged families. So, aware tayo sa mandatong ito, Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Mr. President, the
Ano
department
po
is
ma-announce natin na programa for the homeless? Ano po ang ma-announce po natin? Meron daw silang programa.
Kahit ngayon, Mr. President, meron pong complementary housing programs for the bottom 30% ang department. Pero kinakailangan pa rin yan ng input mula sa ating GAA.
Sa budget sa 2025, meron? How much? Kailangan kami mahanap, Mr. President, actually.
Number of plans, pero we submit this fund doesn't provide with the good sector. So we also put in particular areas for the disaster.
Ang tago niya.
Paano nga? How is it? Ano to? Direct yung financing.
Anong procedure?
Labas po dun sa financing na dinedesign ng DHSUD through the 4PH and hopefully with the government guarantee, ay meron pong iba't iba pang complementary housing programs. Halimbawa yung public rental housing, yung housing support for families living in danger areas, at yung housing support for families affected by disaster. Na lahat po nito pinupondohan ng gobyerno through the GAA, Mr. President.
Pwede po ba sila makaturo ng pangalan ng area na tinitirhan ng mga homeless na biglang nagka-homes? Sige po, anong pangalan ng subdivision na yun or lugar na yun na proyekto ng gobyerno o ng DHSUD? Pakibigay yung pangalan, pakibigay yung address ng lugar na yun.
Ang lahat ng mga ito, Mr. President, ay isasubmit pa lamang ng DHSUD sa ating komite. And I will forward it to the good.
Okay, kung tunay na may plano ang DHSUD for the homeless, magkano naman po ang suma total ng capital requirement ng plano ninyo for the homeless?
Okay.
So 100 plus million.
Okay. These would come, Mr. President, to a total of around 100 billion. Para po dun sa public rental housing, ang tansyang budget required ay 23.86 billion. Para po sa housing support for families living in danger areas, budget required would be 238.17 million lamang? Million per annum. Opo. And for housing support for families affected by disaster, yung budget required would be 34 billion pesos, Mr. President.
Reflected po yan sa 2025 budget ng DHSUD?
Okay. Ito po, Mr. President, ang pinapasubmit na additional. So, hindi pa siya reflected sa 2025 proposed GAA.
Sige pa. So si homeless, a program for the homeless na overtaken nitong condominium project natin for the minimum wage earner and above. So, ganun, is that the reality, Mr. President? Nauna yung well, maybe rin may housing needs din sila. You can call them homeless, but they are employed minimum wage earner and above. Ito yung inuna natin itong 4 trillion program natin sa kanila. But the real homeless, yung mga nasa streets sa daan na nakikita namin, wish list pa.
Hindi completely
MR.
wish list, Mr. President, dahil kinukuha lang namin yung amounts accounted for by NHA's ongoing programs. At ito po ay proceeding alongside yung pag-shift sa 4PH program na may proposed government guarantee. So sa NHA.
And just to be very clear, ito pong flagship program for housing of the Marcos administration, 4PH program, entero, ang konsepto dito, entero condominium units. Tama po. Tama. Yan ang pagkaintindi ko. Entero, condominium.
Originally, yes, Mr. President, pero nagbukas na po ang department na isama, pinag-aaralan isama yung GLAD at naging bukas isama yung CMP, Mr. President.
So, ano tong i-approve natin na budget bali nila? Ganun na, hybrid na ito. When we now give an amount for the 4PH program, sa mind namin, entero condominium or hybrid program na?
Sa ngayon, Mr. President, interest subsidy lang ang covered dito. Pero nag-submit na rin po sila nung, as required or during the committee hearing nung mga complementary.
Kasi, Mr. President, bigla na lang namin naisip ni Majority Leader. Kunyari talaga naisip natin na si homeless beneficiary dito, potential beneficiary. Imagine natin, Mr. President, from homeless, ang unang housing unit na bibigay sa'yo, condominium concept na. It's too complicated for a homeless. Diretso sa condominium na mayroon ng association dues, may rental ka, tapos actually kung ma-fully pay mo na yan, bibigyan ka ngayon ng condominium certificate of title, pero separate pa rin ang land ownership. Di ba? May sariling title yung lupa dyan eh. Yes, RPT. Ngayon, kaya nga, so si homeless, pinatalon ka agad natin sa very complicated sophisticated home ownership system, Mr. President. So,
Culture shock yun.
I mean, that's just a realization namin dito while we were talking about it. Kung totoong inisip natin yung homeless. Kaya nga may doubts kami na baka hindi sila yung naisip dito sa 4PH program. Hindi po si homeless yung nasa streets ngayon. Opo.
Fair enough, Mr. President, and na yung apprehension po natin na sa simula ng 4PH program, lalo na nung binutingting na natin yung financing, na hindi niya kaagad makakapture yung poorest of the poor. Kaya napaka-importante din ng sinasabi ni Minority Leader na yung cultural change din or baka culture shock kung pipilitin lahat ng informal settlers or lahat ng wala pang housing, pumasok lang sa condominium setting. Kaya nga po tingin ko importante ang nagawa natin in the last few years na in a way mapabukas sa isip ng department yung idea ng 4PH na originally purely condominium para pag-aralan at gawin paano i-combine with tried and tested programs like CMP, like GLAD. Pero even dun sa kaso, kung umabot sa may informal settlers na lilipat sa isang medium rise, halimbawa, tulad sa ibang mga syudad na sinabi ng Deputy Majority Leader kanina, mayroong pa rin, kunyari, habang nasa staging area sila, may training na mangyayari, bahagi ng social preparation, yung paghahanda ng itong bagong setting na papasukan ninyo. May training din daw, sabi ng department sa TESDA, para sa livelihood o pagtatrabaho. So, hindi po ito isang physical na pagbabago lamang, hindi lang ito financing na pagbabago, pero meron ding social preparation na mangyayari. Kahit dun sa mga informal settlers na lilipat sa halimbawa medium rise or low rise na condominium. Na hindi lamang yon ang mode ng 4PH na sinusulong natin, Mr. President.
So now that there is a concession from the department head that they are now going to entertain a hybrid 4PH program. Plus the fact that I'm going to raise an issue against the mahaba pa to, Mr. President, the DHSUD versus the DHSUD, especially applied to the multinational village dispute na ang allegation kasi sa akin ng mga lumapit sa akin, may pinapaboran si DHSUD as regulator, si DHSUD adjudicator, parang korte. Pero nagka-clash at na-disregard ang opinion ng adjudicator. Si adjudicator nag-receive ng ebidensya, nag-hearing. Si regulator, pwedeng shortcut, pwedeng pakiusap. So I think marami-rami pa tayong kailangang pag-usapan dito, Mr. President, with that new issue. So can I request for a minute suspension, Mr. President?
Session suspended.
Umani naman ito ng iba't ibang reaksyon mula sa ating mga netizens. Ayon kay Mika Yeager, nakakatuwa na meron katulad ni Senador Pimentel na may dedikasyon sa trabaho at transparency. Pahayag naman ni Sara Gil, Senator Coco is so admirable, lalo na sa pagpapaganda ng kalakaran sa bansa. I think Senador Pimentel has a point here. At ito naman ang saloobin mula sa ating kababayan na si Ana Mayor, huwag na iboto si Risa kasi walang malasakit sa mahihirap. Thank you for exposing this corrupt official. Mga kababayan, feel free to comment below para maglabas ng saloobin sa balitang ito.